After a passenger plane crashes in a horrible accident in America, a group of passengers barely manage to survive. But now they're stuck on a strange and mysterious island, where terrifying dangers and unknown fears wait for them at every step. For those of you who are new to today's episode, links to the previous episodes are pinned in the comments for your convenience. Remember that super intense moment at the end of episode 4 of the Lost series. Injured Ben was tied to a tree near the tower, just as Naomi was trying to get the satellite phone to connect. Just then Locke stabs him in the stomach from behind. Even though Locke points a gun at Jack afterward, he can't bring himself to shoot him because of their old friendship, and then he disappears into the jungle. Right after Locke leaves, Jack's walkie-talkie gets a signal from a ship, and he happily announces that they're survivors of the Oceanic Flight. But behind this joy, a new danger is looming. After the radio tower signal comes through, the islanders' happiness doesn't last long. When Jack connects with the ship, just as the communication ended, everyone noticed that a bloodied Naomi had mysteriously disappeared from there. The bloodstains on the ground showed she had fled through the jungle despite being seriously injured. Right then, the survivors split into two groups. One group stuck with Jack, believing the people from the ship were there to save them. The other group was led by Locke, who believed Ben was telling the truth, that the newcomers on the ship weren't rescuers, but a serious threat to the island. As a result, Harley, Sword, and a bunch of others head off with Locke to hide the old boat on the island. At the same time, another new guy lands on the island by parachute. His name's Daniel Faraday. Jack and Juliet spot him first when they're making their way through the jungle. Daniel's a physicist. He's got a satellite phone with him trying to contact his ship. Jack asks him what their main goal is and why they came to the island. Daniel hesitantly reveals that their main goal isn't actually to rescue the people stranded on the island, but they have some other special mission. Meanwhile, Locke's team pushes deeper into the jungle. Along the way, they find Naomi seriously injured. Just before she dies, Naomi sends a secret coded message to Daniel and his group, so the people on the ship won't realize she's been attacked. After receiving Naomi's signal, 4 people parachute down onto the mysterious island. They are Miles, Charlotte, and Frank. Jack and Daniel team up and find Miles. From the start, Miles is pretty aggressive and suspects that their colleague Naomi was actually killed by Jack. Miles has this strange ability to communicate with dead people. Meanwhile, Locke and his group find Charlotte, who's an archaeologist. They take her hostage because they don't trust the newcomers at all. Finally, Frank, a helicopter pilot named Laputa, is found. Frank's helicopter crashes in the jungle, but he miraculously survives. He confirms that their main ship is anchored a bit offshore in the middle of the sea. Now, 2 clear camps have formed on the island. On one side, Jack wants to get on a helicopter and escape the island by any means. On the other side, Locke believes these newcomers are a huge threat to the island, and that stopping them is the only way to survive. The island's situation has gotten seriously intense. Jack's group and Locke's group have completely split up and started taking action on their own. Jack, Dantel, and Miles head over to the wrecked helicopter. There they find the pilot, Frank Lafleur. Frank assures them the chopper isn't too badly damaged and just needs a bit of fixing before it can fly again. But Frank sets one condition. He won't take the helicopter anywhere until their teammate Charlotte is rescued. Frank knows Charlotte is being held hostage by Locke's group. Meanwhile, Locke's team is holed up in an old barracks on the island with Charlotte. Tries to free himself up close, but fails because of Locke's strict watch. Locke thinks Charlotte and her team's real reason for coming to the island is really harmful. Meanwhile, Ben's clever trickery from his past shows up again. Even though he's captive, Ben keeps trying to mess with Locke's team mentally, but Ben realizes that Locke's decision is pretty final now. To calm things down and get Charlotte released, Seed makes a smart move. He suggests going to Locke's barracks. Seed and Sar then. Desmond joins in. Seed had one goal, to get Charlotte back on Jack's team without any bloodshed so Frank would agree to fly the helicopter. When they got to the barracks, Seed made a deal with Locke. Seed offered to hand over Miles to Locke in exchange for Charlotte. Locke hesitated but agreed, seeing it as a chance to learn the newcomer's real plan by keeping Miles captive. True to the deal, Seed freed Charlotte and returned her to Jack's group, but both Charlotte and Daniel mysteriously. They express their wish to stay on the island. It becomes clear from their behavior that they're more interested in exploring some special resource or place on the island than in being rescued. Just then, Frank gets his helicopter ready to fly. Seed and Desmond decide they'll take the first trip in the helicopter to the main ship out in the middle of the sea. Desmond's main goal is to somehow get in touch with Penny, the woman he loves, whom he had found before. Pilot Frank flies the helicopter up into the sky with Seed and Desmond on board. And it sets off towards the main ship. But shortly after takeoff, a strange flash of lightning and fog appears in the sky. Due to the island's weird weather and geography, the helicopter starts heading toward an unknown horizon. At the same time, someone tries to secretly talk to Miles Ben, who's locked up in the barracks. They let Miles Ben know they actually know who he really is and how powerful he is. They offer Miles Ben a secret deal. If he pays a huge amount of money, they'll they'll lie to his ship's owner and say that Ben is dead. It's clear from here that the newcomers aren't just working under one command. Each of them has their own hidden agenda. Sitting in the helicopter heading toward the ship, Desmond suddenly starts feeling sick. As the storm at sea gets worse, the changes happening inside Desmond start becoming more and more terrifying. Out of the blue, he couldn't recognize Seed, or even remember where he was or how he ended up in this helicopter. Actually, while passing through a special invisible magnetic field surrounding the island, Desmond's brain was seriously affected, and his consciousness started time traveling. Mentally, he kept jumping back and forth between 1996 and the present. Things got so intense that even though Desmond's body was in the helicopter right now, his mind was stuck 12 years in the past. The pilot skillfully flew the helicopter through the storm and landed it safely back on the main ship. But even after stepping onto the ship, Desmond showed no improvement physically or mentally. The ship's doctor locked him up in a special room because of the island's strange. He had already seen patients affected by the condition. There in Desmond, he meets with Said and another crew member of the same ship, McLaren, who's dealing with the same mental issues. McLaren warns Desmond that if he can't quickly find some kind of anchor or main focal point to tie his two timelines together, his brain won't be able to handle the stress and will completely shut down and he'll die. Somehow, they managed to get through to Daniel Faraday on the island via satellite phone. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, Desmond is advised that he needs to go back to 1996 and find someone who's still alive now and can be fully trusted. For Desmond, that person was Penny, the most important person in his life. Daniel tells him that when he goes back, he has to connect with Penny in a way that she's ready for a phone call about 12 years later, right before Christmas in 2004. Meanwhile, on the ship, Said is trying to fix the satellite equipment, as Daniel instructed. At the same time, Desmond's consciousness. In 1996, Oxford University saw Daniel's past self, and later, after a lot of struggle, Penny managed to track down his address. The last meeting between Desmond and Penny in the past was incredibly emotional. Desmond pleaded with Penny to wait for a phone call exactly 12 years later, just before Christmas in 2004. Penny was confused at first, but seeing Desmond's desperation, she finally agreed. Meanwhile, on the ship, thanks to Seed's efforts, the satellite phone connection was restored. Desmond painfully returned from his 1996 memories back to the present time. Penny calls Penn's number. On the other end, Penny picks up the phone. After 12 years of relentless searching and waiting for Desmond, it all comes to an end with this one phone call. Penn tells her that she's been looking for Desmond all these years and has finally tracked down where he is. Through this call, Desmond's mental instability eases, his memory stabilizes, and he miraculously escapes death. But amidst this good news, Said and Desmond sense a new, big danger brewing inside the ship. They realize that this massive vessel, the mysterious owner, isn't really their friend. They're actually caught in a deadly trap. Even though Desmond's life on the ship is a bit less at risk, the ship's communication system has mysteriously been shut down, so no messages can get between the island people and the outside world. Right then, Juliet and Jack, who are on the island, start to uncover a big secret. Juliet finds out that the newcomers on the ship have complete info and a map of a super-secret place on the island, a medical station called Staff. Juliet became alert because that station stored some special chemicals and medical supplies for the island. Juliet and Jack quickly headed toward the station. When they arrived, they saw that Daniel and Charlotte had already snuck inside and were trying to neutralize a highly toxic and deadly gas there. At first, Jack and Juliet thought Daniel and Charlotte had come to use the toxic gas to destroy the entire island. But later, Charlotte revealed that their real intention was. They were different. They went straight to the main source of the gas to permanently shut it down, so that Ben or anyone else couldn't use that deadly weapon later to carry out a massacre on the island. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, the fence locking Ben up was guarded even more strictly. When Locke finds out these newcomers aren't just some ordinary rescue team, but part of a huge conspiracy, he's forced to make a new deal with Ben. Locke wants to know who's really behind the newcomers, the main backer or mastermind. That's when Ben drops a shocking piece of information. It turns out that the real owner of this rescue ship is none other than Charles Widmore, Penny's dad, a super rich and powerful guy who spent years and a fortune building a private army to control the island and its mysterious powers. Charles Widmore has sent these newcomers with one order: bring Ben back alive at any cost and wipe out every other creature on the island. When Locke finds out the truth, he's left speechless. He realizes that Jack's group, the ones who mistakenly think they're rescuers, are actually a serious threat. At the same time, Said and Desmond start getting help from a mysterious person inside the ship. They're led to a secret door inside the ship. There they find someone they thought had been dead on the island a long time ago. That person is none other than Michael. Michael stands before them, looking deeply troubled and burdened with guilt. He reveals that he's working undercover as a crew member on Charles Widmore's ship, and all this. To bust the terrible conspiracy, he's working undercover as an insider informer for Ben. Michael's presence on the ship totally silences Said and Desmond. Michael spills all the secrets to them. The guilt from everything he did in the past to escape the island was eating him up inside. After returning to the island, he was tormented by his conscience and tried to end his life multiple times. But strangely, the island wouldn't let him die. Later, on Ben's orders, he joined Charles Widmore's ship as a disguised crew member so that Widmore's main plan gets messed up and his old friends on the island are saved. But Said just can't forgive Michael for this guilt or betrayal. He sees Michael as a traitor. Without taking any chances, Said goes straight to the ship's Captain Gobot and spills Michael's real identity. But Captain Gobot was only following Widmore's orders and wanted to avoid unnecessary bloodshed on the island, so he decides to help Said. At the same time, though, the other armed crew members on the ship are slowly. Things start getting out of control as the mystery around Locke's camp on the island deepens. Locke decides to let go of some control over Ben and sets out to find the island's guidance, believing that the island itself is showing him the way. Taking Hurley and Ben along, he heads off again in search of the mysterious hut, Jacob's house. Along the way, Ben hints at a complicated past relationship with Locke and reveals that Jacob is actually the true guardian of the island. After a tough journey, when they finally reach the hut, Locke goes inside and finds he comes face to face with an unbelievable sight. Instead of finding Jacob, he sees that Christian Shephard is actually Jack's dead father. Sitting beside him is Claire's little baby. Christian looks at Locke and in a clear and serious voice says that there's only one way to save this island from destruction. The entire island has to be physically moved and scattered. Locke receives this message and becomes extremely confused and worried. He can't wrap his head around how it's even possible to move a whole island from its geographical spot, but he also knows that if the newcomers take control of the island, everything will be destroyed. Meanwhile, a new crisis hits Jack's camp. Jack suddenly loses consciousness from intense stomach pain. Juliet quickly checks him and realizes that Jack's appendicitis has become severe and needs immediate surgery. Using the limited medical supplies on the island, Juliet and Bernard successfully operate on Jack. Even though Jack is sick, he refuses to rest. He hears that armed commandos from the ship. The team has already landed on the island and they're heading straight for Locke's group. Jack pulls himself together, ready to save everyone, and starts making final plans to take over the helicopter at any cost. Charles, the ruthless leader of the deadly armed commando squad sent by Widmore, is named Kimmy. Equipped with heavy weapons, he and his entire team land on the island and rush straight to the old barracks looking for Locke's group. His only mission: capture Ben alive, no matter what, along with the rest of the people on the island. The Locke team was still holed up inside the barracks, completely wiped out. Without saying a word, Kimmy and her team suddenly started wreaking havoc inside. Out of nowhere, gunfire rained down from all sides. Right before Locke's eyes, people started dropping one after another. Showing no mercy, Kimmy's team caused a massive explosion at the barracks called Connolly and captured Alex. Alex was Ben's adopted daughter. Kimmy took Alex hostage at point-blank range and dragged her in front of Ben, ordering him to surrender. Doesn't comply, he'll shoot his daughter. Ben keeps making his moves. He knew that Kimmy was bluffing, so he says Alex is nothing to him and Kimmy can do whatever she wants. But Ben's plan turns out to be wrong. Ruthless, Kimmy kills Alex right in front of Ben at point-blank range. The brutal death of his daughter burns away all the humanity hidden inside Ben. All the feelings seem to vanish from his face. He quietly goes to a secret room in the guest house, and once there, an ancient dark power on the island awakens. It summons that mysterious smoke monster. Soon the barracks are engulfed in thick black smoke. The monstrous smoke creature suddenly attacks Kimmy's armed commando team. Despite their high-tech weapons, the commandos are completely overwhelmed by this unstoppable force. In the chaos caused by the smoke monster's rampage, Kimmy's team gets scattered, and Locke, Harley, and Swore manage to escape. But Kimmy wasn't someone who'd give up that easily. No, he gets seriously injured but survives, and his thirst for revenge against Ben burns twice as hot. He decides to head back to the helicopter with his remaining crew, and fits a special kind of dead man's switch device on himself. Meanwhile, Sawyer moves through the jungle towards Jack's camp with Harley, trying to warn them. But Locke's decision is totally different. He knows that the only order from Christian Shephard is to protect the island from Kimmy and Widmore's soldiers. It has to be done. This whole island needs to disappear off the map. Locke and Ben head together toward that super-secret part of the island, the Orchid Station. That's where the strange and almost magical tech to move the island is hidden. The island's situation is now on the brink of total destruction. Charles, Widmore's armed forces chief, has been blinded by the fire of revenge. He's installed a super-dangerous dead man's monitor device in his own body. That means if his heart stops or he dies, Widmore's main. A huge amount of explosives or C-bombs planted on the ship will detonate all at once, completely destroying the entire ship. Locke and Ben move together toward the secret station, the Orchid. From the outside, this station looks like a simple greenhouse or a plant research lab, but hidden underground is the island's biggest mysterious place, a center of ancient power. Before they can reach it, Kimmy and her armed survivors surround the Orchid station. Ben realizes that to face Kimmy, they'll have to fight head-on. Stopping was impossible, so he gave himself up to Kimmy willingly. Kimmy took Ben hostage and started heading towards the helicopter, intending to get him to Widmore alive. But actually, Ben was leading Kimmy into a trap. Right then, Sayar and Seed came back through the jungle to Jack's camp and briefed everyone on the situation. Jack found out the helicopter was still operational, and this was their last chance to escape the island. Jack, Seed, Sayar, Sun, Kate, and Desmond quickly headed to the helicopter. They keep moving forward. On the way, Kimmy and her team clash with them. Seed and Sayar launch a swift attack on the commandos with great skill. Taking advantage of the chaos, Ben frees himself. But in that intense moment, the brutal murder of his daughter Alex flashes before Ben's eyes again. Blinded by rage and desire for revenge, Ben stabs Kimmy in the throat without thinking about the consequences, killing her. As soon as Kimmy dies, the signal from her Desmond's device stops, and it becomes active. The main ship's countdown timer is ticking. Michael, Desmond, and everyone else on board realize the bomb above them could go off any second. Jack rushes over and jumps into Frank's helicopter. Because space is tight and the weight is too much, the chopper can't fly properly. Right then, Sayid makes an incredible sacrifice. Saying goodbye to Kate, he jumps off the moving helicopter into the sea to lighten the load so the rest can safely head back to the ship. Could fly away. Jack, Kate, Seed, Sun, Desmond, Frank, and little Aaron all reach the helicopter hovering above the main ship. But before they could get down, they see the terrifying countdown inside the ship hitting its final stage. Michael was desperately trying to stop the bomb from exploding by pouring liquid nitrogen inside the ship, but it didn't work out. Suddenly, with a deafening blast, the whole ship blows up. Huge flames and smoke cloud the area. Michael loses his life in the explosion. Sitting in the helicopter, Jack and Sun stood frozen, watching the only hope of their survival, the light and their loved ones, disappear right before their eyes. The main Widmore ship exploded into a massive fireball right in front of them. Frank's helicopter, running low on fuel, couldn't stay in the air much longer. With no other choice, Frank had to make an emergency landing in the ocean. With a loud crash, the helicopter slammed into the water. Jack, Kate, Sayid, Sun, Desmond, Frank, and little Aaron managed to grab onto a small life raft and climbed in, barely staying afloat. They drift in a silent void. All they see before their eyes is the endless ocean and shadows of sorrow. After hours of floating at sea, suddenly a ship's light appears in the distance. It was Penny Widmore's search vessel. Penny's team hauls life raft up. Finally, after a long 12-year wait, Desmond and Penny are reunited. It's an incredibly emotional moment that touches the silent sea. But behind this relief comes a big, scary truth. Jack gathers everyone together and tells them clearly. What they saw and went through can't be shared with the world. If Charles Widmore finds out they know about the island's magical location, he'll hunt them down and kill them, and no one left on the island would be safe. So they decide to come up with a fake story. Their plane crashed in the ocean, and they got stranded on a deserted island where nobody else survived. This special group later becomes known to the whole world as Oceanic Six. Meanwhile, back on the island, something unbelievable and supernatural is happening. After killing Kimmy deep inside the Orchid station, Ben goes down. He knows that because of Kimmy's death, the bomb on the ship has already exploded. Before saying goodbye to Locke, Ben admits that for the island's safety, this last task has to be done by him. Because whoever does it will never be able to come back to the island again. Ben breaks through the walls of the ancient station and enters an icy, cold cave. Inside, there's a huge ancient stone wheel, installed that's been the island's main source of power for thousands of years. Attached together, Ben started spinning that cool wheel with all his might. As the wheel turned, blue light and intense energy radiated from it, causing a massive earthquake across the island. From the lifeboat floating on the sea above, Jack and the others watched the scene in amazement. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the sky above the entire island turned white. In an unbelievable flash of light, the whole island disappeared in the blink of an eye from its geographical spot, where just moments ago there had been a huge mountain and dense jungle. The island was just surrounded by the open blue sea. The island vanished in the blink of an eye, and the lives of those 6 lucky people returned to the main flow of the world. They're now known as the Oceanic Six. The whole world knows them as the miraculous survivors of a plane crash, but the truth hidden deep inside their hearts haunts them every single moment. After coming back from the island, Kate started caring for little Aaron like he was her own child. She convinced everyone that Aaron was hers, but this story she created Lion kept eating away at him from the inside, constantly burning him with guilt. Meanwhile, San's life completely changed. He turned to stone, overwhelmed by the deep grief of losing his husband, Jin. Believing Jin had died on the island, he threw all his focus into his father's huge business and eventually took control of a major share of the company. But deep down, Sam was sure that Jin's fate wasn't just because of the plane crash. Instead, power-hungry people like Charles Widmore and Ben's schemes were behind it. San secretly met with Widmore and Ben's. Sarid gets caught up in a dangerous game of revenge. A huge storm hits his life. He goes back to Nadia, the woman he loves, and they get married, living happily together. But that happiness doesn't last long. Nadia dies suddenly in a mysterious accident. Heartbroken, Sarid realizes she was murdered. Right then, Ben shows up again. Ben plays on Sarid's emotions and turns him into a professional hitman, convincing him that it was Widmore's people who killed Nadia. He did it, and to save the rest of the friends on the island, Widmore's loyal people had to be taken out of the picture. But the saddest part is when Jack returns to his original world and starts a successful career as a doctor. His mind keeps drifting back to that lost island. He drowns himself in alcohol and drugs. Every night, he has terrible nightmares and wakes up feeling like he betrayed the friends he left behind on the island. In this darkest, broken phase of Jack's life, one day, he mysteriously meets someone again. Ben gives him some shocking and scary news. He tells Jack that ever since they left the island, things have gone completely out of control. The balance on the island is totally messed up, and those they left behind, Sword, Juliet, and the rest of the crew, are now in serious danger. Ben makes it clear to Jack that if they want to save those innocent people and restore order, there's only one way to do it. The entire Oceanic Six has to come back together and find a way to return to that mysterious island. But the real problem is standing somewhere else. Kate, Sun, or Sayid, none of them are willing to go back to that nightmare. Meanwhile, late one night, a somber Jack finds himself in front of a special coffin. At the final stage of the mystery, the terrible truth inside the coffin is revealed. The body Jack is standing over, crying uncontrollably, is none other than John Locke's. Yes, after somehow escaping the island, Locke took on the name Jeremy Bentham and tried to track down the others from Oceanic Six one by one. Locke begged everyone desperately to return to the island, because he knew how important it was to save the island, but no one listened to him. Instead, they all thought he was crazy and sent him away. In the midst of this total failure and loneliness, Locke mysteriously dies. Locke's tragic end crushes all of Jack's pride and makes him realize that Locke was right all along. At the same time, at the barracks and Orchid Station, the final consequences of what happened there start to become clear. When Ben spins the ancient ice-covered wheel, throwing the whole island into a whirlwind of uncertain time, the island remains. Joe, Juliet, Miles, Daniel, and Charlotte are in serious trouble. The island isn't just moving geographically anymore, it's jumping back and forth through time, past and future. Every time there's a flash of light, their location and time shift, causing them severe physical problems. Meanwhile, back on the main Earth, Ben's plan is becoming clear. He teams up with Jack to recover Locke's body from the coffin. Ben reveals that Locke's death wasn't an accident. In fact, it's the key to reopening the way back to the island. Because according to the island's weird rules, just like the first time they crashed on the island with a dead body, this time too they have to get on a plane carrying Locke's body. Ben and Jack start convincing the rest of the Oceanic Six one by one. Sun agrees, driven by revenge for Jin's death and a tiny hope. In the end, he got caught and had no choice but to board the plane. Everyone together bought tickets for a specific plane, Adra 316, which was supposed to fly right over the exact coordinates where the island had moved to. Jack, Kate, Sayid, Sun, Ben, and the coffin-bound dead Locke all sat together in first class. Not long after the plane took off, they hit that same familiar turbulence and strange weather. Suddenly, a bright, flashing light appeared all around, just like what happened with Oceanic 815, and with that intense light, the plane. Lost in the unbelievable cracks of time and space, Jack opens his eyes, showing us the thrilling end of this story. He wakes up again in that green forest, just like he did in the first season, but this time the situation is totally different. Because they didn't just return to an unknown island, they got lost in a whole new, unfamiliar world of time. And in this strange whirlwind of time, will they be able to make it out? If you want to find out, give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel and quickly drop a comment saying, Part 5 please.